following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back here to another episode of Sports Chatter TV. I'm your host, Evan Bedell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson.
Hi.
And not much going on in the sports world this week, but Steve will discuss a couple things. And I think the biggest news, the all four sports here is the Tom Brady injury scare that we had yesterday at training camp. He goes down, apparent left knee injury. Fans and media start freaking out, thinking, possible another tear in his knee like a couple seasons ago. Fortunately for Patriots fans and New England fans, Brady, MRI comes back negative, and he is supposedly good to go. He has the left knee brace on. But what were your thoughts there, thinking that Brady could be done for the season here?
Well, let me ask you this. Did you see the video of the supposed hit?
Someone gets pushed. His shoulder, I think, gets pushed back into him when he goes down, which, you never want to see if you're a number 12 fan.
No, I think the best part about the whole video is the commentary of it, because the guy's talking is thinking what everyone in New England was thinking, just, oh, God, no. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I first heard about this story, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I started looking at Mallet and Tebow's stats, thinking, well, this is the way the future's going to go. Brady's done. But thank God that everything came back negative. Reports are saying it's just a bruise, and he's still scheduled to play, obviously. So I'm thoroughly happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Brady, before the season started, he said he felt the best he's ever felt. He's 36 years old. So
I mean, well, think about it. In that preseason game, have you ever seen him throw a ball so well in a preseason game?
He was a machine. And, if it makes you wonder if you're a Patriots fan, Brady isn't going to be around forever. He's probably going to play, hopefully, till he's 40, early 40s. So he's got 4 or 5 good years left, hopefully. And you start to wonder, maybe the Patriots should start grooming a potential, heir apparent to Brady here. They got Mallet in the second round. He hasn't really, I think, developed to where, this coaching staff thinks he should be. You got Tebow, who can't possibly, who's been said in reports that he's the worst quarterback in the league right now, playing the quarterback position.
Such a lie.
Which, I mean, you obviously disagree. I agree with. I don't think he can.
You think Tebow is the worst
I think out of every quarterback listed as a quarterback on the depth chart in the NFL, he's the worst.
Sanchez.
He's better. Sanchez is better than him. I would take Sanchez over Tebow, and I would take the third string quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Arizona Cardinals over Tim Tebow.
Now sliding straight to my face.
Tebow should either be a fullback or a tight end or just a special teamer. I don't think he's ever gonna play quarterback again in the NFL. But that's a totally different.
Let me ask you this hypothetical here. Highly, highly unlikely. But let's say Manziel gets taken pretty early in the draft, and the Patriots end up with him. Mm-hmm. Would you want
with Johnny Manziel?
Would you want Johnny Football as our future quarterback?
No.
Why not?
Just because, one, I don't think he's going to be that good in the pros. I mean, right now he's being likened to, if he fully, drops the attitude and, doesn't really have that many more problems, and he continues to grow, maybe a poor man's version of a Russell Wilson, because they're around the same height. But I don't think it'll ever be as good as Wilson, and just the media that comes with him. I think there's better.
I think he does bring a media circus.
I think there's better quarterbacks that they could, possibly draft next season in the draft.
But I mean, I think if you're the Patriots and you're looking, or really any team, you're looking for a quarterback, that's got to be your main priority. You got to get him. Obviously, I mean, look at any quarterback in the league right now. Out of the 30 guys or so, I think 27 of them were all first-round picks. So you got to devote your pick to getting a quarterback, grooming him in preseason, just knowing that he's going to be the starter, going into it, and everything like that. But I think Johnny Football's problem is that he just needs to fix where his head is at. Mm-hmm. He's not thinking clearly. He's making stupid mistakes. He's being a young college kid. But I think the skills are there, absolutely. I mean, he ran for 21 touchdowns and threw 26.
I mean, he won the Heisman as a freshman, which can't be debated, which has never happened before. But, you talked about, the grooming, the quarterbacks. That's really, if you look in the past couple of years, that's not really where, the NFL teams are going, where you used to say, like, an Aaron Rodgers sat two to three seasons behind Brett Favre. Now you're seeing, if you draft a quarterback in the in the first round, and even the early second or the second round in general,
I think
they're throwing them right in there pretty much, or they're only sitting for one season, and they're thrown in. You don't really groom a quarterback anymore for 3 to 4 or 2 to 4 seasons anymore. It's not really doesn't really a reality in the NFL anymore. So I think if I'm trying to predict the future here, I think that Patriots fans, the Patriots team, probably won't draft a quarterback next year, and if they do, it'll be like a 4th or 5th round pick. And I think the following year, or even the year after, then you draft maybe a 1st or 2nd round quarterback, because Brady will sort of be on his last legs per se,
Sure.
And then you sit him for maybe 1 to 2 seasons, and then you throw him in there.
Right. I mean, like you said, it's your first priority is just picking that guy and having him and just grooming him. But, I mean, there's only a few second rounders I can even think of, like Russell Wilson, and guys who are still playing very well, but obviously they were taken at the beginning of the second round too. But you brought up Aaron Rodgers. I'd like to think that, definitely being behind Brett Favre helped his career a lot and helped him out in Green Bay. But I'd like to think that if he ended up anywhere else, he would still be the talent that he is, and he would still be an elite quarterback anyway.
That's the thing.
So I don't know if the whole sitting portion even really plays into what a quarterback could become.
That's the thing. You think like Tom Brady, one of the, if not the greatest quarterback of all time, if you draft someone to, be his protege and he sits behind him and watches, you think this, the guy would be maybe the next Tom Brady or be a great quarterback. But if you look over their past couple of years, every quarterback they've drafted to, sit behind Brady and possibly take over or something, or, be a capable second, backup quarterback, they've gotten rid of pretty much. You got Kevin O'Connell going back a few years, Hoyer last year. I mean, and then other numerous quarterbacks who they've just gotten rid of, or, and even Mallett this season being talked about as possible trade bait if he has a good preseason. So, I mean, I don't really know if drafting a quarterback behind Brady so early will be beneficial, because I don't know if he'll be around for when Brady does, step away.
Right. I mean, this is a tough town to play quarterback in. I mean, the playbook itself is over 400 pages long, and guys like Tebow are obviously struggling, trying to learn the routes and everything. But I think for the Patriots in the future anyway, it would be pretty important to pick a guy up first few rounds and then have Brady just teach him everything, because he's still a great teacher. I mean, he had Bledsoe teach him everything that he knew. And I think the possibility is there to still have a great quarterback. But let me throw this to you. Who would you rather have? Say Brady goes down, it's a knee injury, he's done for the season, or at least 6 weeks. Who do you want as quarterback in there? Do you think Mallett or Tebow are competent quarterbacks?
I wouldn't be feeling confident with either. I'd rather they go maybe pick up a Brian Hoyer, who's been there for a couple of years, pick him up, because right now I think he might be a free agent, or second or third string quarterback for, I want to say, Arizona. Pick him up rather than, I mean, if it was between Mallett or Tebow, I'd rather have Mallett out there, because I think he's the more prototypical quarterback.
He knows the system better.
He has a better arm, and he does know that he's been in the system longer. But I mean, I wouldn't feel confident with either in there. I think the Pats would not pull like a Matt Castle season where they go 11-5
Dark days.
Miraculously. But we touched on Mark Sanchez a little bit. They obviously drafted Geno Smith there early second rounds. He's battling with Sanchez to be the starting quarterback for the Jets here, and Rex Ryan comes out on Wednesday, and says that Geno Smith had his worst practice ever. He was brutal, pretty much, lambasted Smith here. Smith, started dealing with an ankle injury, and now Sanchez is named as their starting quarterback for their second preseason game coming up here. If you're Smith, I don't know how that makes you feel that your head coach is blasting you in the media. I don't know if it's a sort of a motivational tactic to tell Smith, pick it up a little bit. But I still think Smith is the smart choice to be their week 1 starter, just because Sanchez is no Sanchez, as the Jets fans like to call him.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't impressed me at all at that first preseason game. He played all right. I mean, nothing really that great. And Smith was only in there. I think he only took like 14 snaps or so. So he wasn't really being utilized that well. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying last week about how they were thinking, oh, yeah, Sanchez will be our guy, like blah, blah, blah. Because I was saying, is it that Sanchez is really playing that well, or is it that Geno isn't playing adequately enough to take over that position? I mean, having 4 interceptions in practice and 3 during 11-on-11 alone, it's a bit of an indicator. I I mean, an ankle itself, it's going to be bothersome. But I think if you really want this guy to be your franchise quarterback, he needs to be out there and working through the bumps in the system.
Yeah, I mean, like we touched on a little bit earlier, you know, you don't draft a quarterback in the first or second round anymore, you know, sit for a season, you try to throw him in there. And I think Smith has more offensive, you know, talent than Sanchez. He's obviously more mobile than Sanchez here. And yeah, you got to throw him in. I mean, what do you have to lose?
He needs to take more than 14 snaps in a game.
Rex Ryan is pretty much trying to win to save his job. And I think the best chance you have is with Smith, even though he is a rookie and Sanchez has been there longer. I don't even know if Sanchez has the respect of his teammates. You know, it's sort of, he has some off the field, you know, stories that come up every now and again with him. And I think Smith does give the Jets here the best chance to win.
I think he's the future. He's the new light. I mean, like you said, everyone doesn't believe in Sanchez. He has no confidence anymore. It's noticeable out on the field. I mean, even his throwing motion itself, it's not as powerful as it once was. I think it's time for him to kind of fade back and stop trying to be that leader of the team, which he's not, and kind of hand the role over to Geno and see what he can do. But obviously it's tough as a quarterback to just give up your starting position like that. But I think Geno himself needs to kind of step up, wake up, and get the plays down, and obviously just not throw interceptions, and just get more actual game time experience.
Yeah.
I think he should play 3 quarters in the next preseason game.
Yeah, I mean, I think usually a third preseason game is, you know, the crucial game because usually all the starters don't really play that much in the fourth. So I'm looking here for their third preseason game to really be an indication of who will be their starting quarterback or who has the best chance to be the week 1 starter. But, you know, moving on here to another star player for the, you know, of the league, and one of the top linebackers in the game, Von Miller, gets suspended before training camp for the first 4 games for, you know, NFL substance abuse policy, and he's appealing it, and his appeal today, Thursday, got, you know, suspended. And then even, which, I mean, is a big deal for the Broncos because you want him on the field. He's probably your best defensive player. And then on Sunday, he gets arrested because he had failed to appear in court for a previous charge he had against him. I mean, this just isn't a good offseason for Von Miller, who I think, you know, was sort of a role model for college players because he was sort of the young, energetic linebacker. You know, wasn't really in the news for much except for, you know, playing well and being one of the top players. And if you're the Broncos, you got to be disappointed with his actions here over the past couple months.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what's the point in trying to get an appeal when you're not going to show up? Mm-hmm. I mean, Broncos desperately need this guy back, and like you said, I mean, he's a guy that players like Manti Te'o and guys that look up to him and who have had a great season and are just progressing skill-wise. And, you know, the Broncos need him back because their first few games are going to be against some division rivals. So they want to actually have competent D out there. And just to have him not show up and kind of be lackadaisical about the whole ban it's tough all around.
Yeah, if Miller, you know, does end up being suspended here for the first 4 games of the season, how do you think that affects, you know, the Broncos overall as a team? Because they're picked probably to have the best record in the entire NFL, picked to be, you know, one of the top favorites to be, you know, Super Bowl champs here. They obviously picked up Wes Welker in the offseason. They got a prolific offense there with Peyton Manning. Do you think this Miller, you know, possible 4-game suspension will have that big of an effect, or do you think the Broncos will be able to tough out the first 4 games without, you know, Miller in the lineup?
Oh, I think it's absolutely going to play a factor. I mean, if you look at Patriots in previous seasons, they were an offensive powerhouse, couldn't stop the run game, and had no pass defense out there at all. This is a guy that, you know, racks up sacks in a season. He's a guy who's made his career about being around the ball, having, you know, numerous tackles a game. I think not having him in your backfield is going to be lethal, especially for their first few games.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos will end up doing, you know, well here, and I think they will be one of the top teams in the NFL. But I definitely, you know, think that this Miller suspension is going to be somewhat of a factor going forward because I think he's the leader of their defense here. But, you know, moving on to another star, young player in the league, Robert Griffin III. Getting in the news, not, you know, he's in the news with comments he's making about starting week 1, but, you know, he's in the news again because Donovan McNabb, former, you know, quarterback and ESPN analyst, is just, I don't know what his deal is with RG3,
Yeah.
you know, his fascination or his personal vendetta is. But, you know, he was in the news a couple weeks ago. We touched on he was trying to give unsolicited advice to Robert Griffin III. He said he wanted to sit down with him and his dad, try to give him guidance when RG3 never even asked for it. Or it was sort of out of the blue. And then he comes out, you know, yesterday and says that the Redskins have brainwashed RG3. You know, he's not really all the young players in the league think they have all the answers. And my, you know, just thoughts on this story is, why is Donovan McNabb making these comments and like just
Thank you.
Just, you know, just be quiet. Like, it's not your job here to try to give advice to someone who doesn't need. I don't even think he needs advice or wants it. It's just it seems like he's trying to get in just the headlines here.
Just what is McNabb's infatuation with RG3? I mean, you don't see him giving out advice to any other young players like Tannehill or anybody else. It's only RG3. And clearly he's not listening to him. I mean, he said in a press conference alone that, you know what, I think it'd be better if we didn't talk to each other. But here's McNabb coming back with more advice for him and telling him not to listen to his own organization, saying, you know, that he thinks he has all the answers. He's a young, confident player. Of course, you know, that's a leader of the team. You're going to want a guy who thinks he knows all the answers. I mean, why do you listen to McNabb unless he wants to lose 3 NFC championships and get run out of 3 different towns?
The only reason I can think is McNabb is doing this is maybe because he feels like he should, you know, give guidance to a young player in the league, because maybe when he was a young player, quarterback in the league, he could have used some guidance and didn't receive it, so maybe he's trying to, you know, make up for that. But, I mean, like you said, why would you want advice from McNabb? It's not like he's the greatest quarterback of all time. You know, I'd rather get advice from, you know, Dan Marino, Steve Young, Joe Namath, like, you know, all the greats here. When great quarterbacks come to mind, I'm not like, oh, Donovan McNabb, I need some, you know, guidance.
McNabb wants to talk to me.
I know, I need some guidance and advice from him, which I don't even want. So, I mean, this whole story is just sort of absurd that it's the second time that McNabb's made comments about Robert Griffin III, which it's really a non-story if you think about it, but it sort of is a story just because of how ridiculous it is.
Just the constant useless advice. It's not even any criticism or anything. It's just, oh, don't listen to your organization. I think you're rushing back to playing too soon. Like, even though he's playing it smart, he's only playing in practice, and you know, he's playing full speed with tackling and stuff. But he's getting the throws in, he's getting the reps in, and working through his injury, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely a story to like keep your eye on for all the viewers out there.
Infatuation grows
you
with
see
him.
If another story comes out with McNabb saying something else about RG3. But, you know, lastly, moving on here to J.J. Watt, you know, I think the best defensive player in the league, young player out of Wisconsin. You know, I think just going into his 3rd year for the Texans, comes out and says, you know, I want to play on the offensive side of the ball here for head coach Gary Kubiak of the Texans. You know, he played, if people don't know his backstory, he played at Central Michigan as a tight end. Yep. Left, you know, dropped out of school there, went to community college and walked on to Wisconsin, became this, you know, superstar, all stud defensive, you know, force there, and obviously goes to Texans and continues his, you know, supremacy. And then I don't think it's a bad idea if he does play offense. I mean, he did play tight end in college. He's got the hands. I think it's just another, you know, weapon, maybe even as a decoy for the Texans. And I think head coach there, Gary Kubiak, definitely has to consider it, which he says he is doing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was lining up a few times during the Pro Bowl even, and just, you know, getting looks. But, you know, he's a real athletic guy, which is obvious. And I think the problem, though, is like you said, I mean, he has the experience playing tight end. I think he had 16 catches for 77 yards or something. Decent statistic. But I think the problem is that when you put him lining up on offense and he gets hurt, it's Kubiak on the line there, because this is a star player for you, star defenseman. And, you know, now he's out, and because you decided to go out on a whim and experiment a little bit.
Yeah, that would be my only argument. Like you said, if he gets injured, then you look like
because he's a 100% healthy guy.
Then all the blame would be placed on Kubiak. It sort of reminds me of the Gronk situation when Gronk broke his forearm for the first time, blocking on an extra kick there.
Yeah.
And people were like, why is Gronk out there? I think that would be the same if Watt got injured there. But, you know, let's move on here to a little Major League Baseball talk. Big story today. Probably one of I think the biggest story of the week here in the sports world. You know, MLB owners will vote, and it seems like it's going to pass here, that extended replay in baseball, which would be, you know, first. Right now they just have home runs, and they would, you know, managers would have video challenges, which, you know, I don't know, baseball's already a long game as it is, pretty tedious, like 4-hour games. I don't know if the instant replay, challenges would make the game even longer. I can see the benefits, making sure the call is right, a quick play at second base. Is he safe? Is he not safe? But I think just, instant replay could end up hurting the game in the end if, MLB owners decide to go with this action.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit on the fence about it. I think some of the things coming with the whole instant replay are good movements for baseball as far as how, coaches can't challenge balls and strikes or anything at the plate, really. They have 3 challenges in a game, one during the first 6 innings, 2 7th on, obviously, with the umpire still having discretion over home runs, which I think is all good things because, the game needs it. I think we're a little bit spoiled with the NHL and NFL and everything, obviously having instant replay. But as far as being a fan of it, I would hate to see baseball lose the human aspect of it because, I mean, it's real entertaining watching a manager storm out and toss his hat and getting tossed from the game and just having a big flare-up. And I think it lights the team up, too, kind of ignites them. So I would hate to see baseball kind of lose that passion and, umpires and stuff that's been there since the beginning of the game. So I think it's interesting to see what could possibly happen. I think for games itself, replays would be good, but I think all the things that they're trying to incorporate could be held back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, calls that are challenged, it says it would be reviewed by either the MLB headquarters there in New York, sort of like NHL when a goal is, under review, it goes to the headquarters there in Toronto. So similar there. I have to agree. I think, it would be. I think I'm sort of on the fence too, just because I can see, obviously, like I said, I can see the pros and cons of it. If the game's already so long.
It is long.
You pretty much get 3 challenges of the game, like you said, 1 in the first 6, 2 after the 7th. I mean, is it strategy? Like, is it like I'm sort of unclear. They didn't really say in the articles. Like, is that like NFL, where if you get it correct, you don't lose a challenge? Is it gonna be like that in the MLB? So, I mean, I sort of think they have kinks, but it seems pretty consensus that owners are gonna agree on this, and this is gonna get passed and instated in the league within the next couple of years here.
Yeah, I think what is it? They need like 70% vote for it to pass or something. I agree with you. I think the game is long in itself. It is, but I don't know about the whole having half-hour hold-ups for replays just to check and see if a guy's out at first base or not. Obviously, it's crucial, but the umpires do miss some blatant calls sometimes. But you'd like to think that 95% of the time they're pretty correct. I think maybe if we didn't go with instant replays, a good solution would just be include more umpires. Maybe have 2 more umpires sitting behind second base or something, and just to have extra eyes on plays.
Yeah, I mean, it also brings up the question: which calls are you going to be able to challenge? Like,
yeah,
is it fair, foul, like safe or not safe, or is it going to be even like you can only challenge a call on did it go over the third base line or something like that on a hit? But I mean, this going like another aspect of the story is Bud Selig, the commissioner here. This would be, I mean, he's retiring after the season. This would sort of be his legacy. He sort of gets a 2-for-1 in one season. He gets the A-Rod suspension, the whole PD steroid scandal there, and then he gets this rule, which I think this would be his lasting legacy as sort of a power lover, I guess you could say. I mean, he gets the A-Rod, 211 games and unreal lengths of his suspension, and then he gets this rule, which will likely be in the game for the rest of the time unless he gets voted out. So. I mean, Bud Selig, I think he's trying to leave his mark on the game. And, when people look back years from now, they'll be like, oh, Bud Selig, he was the one who gave A-Rod that huge suspension and, put the instant replays and challenges in the game, which I think years from now, I think you'll be able to look in hindsight and be like, was he good or bad for the game? Or were these rules, suspensions that were given out and the rules that were instated, were they beneficial or did they end up harming the game in the end? Which, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, so we'll definitely have to look, years from now and see how people look at this.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think Selig's been pretty good. Obviously, he's been hypocritical though. This is the height of PED use in baseball, and I feel like he's kind of turned a blind eye to it a little bit. Obviously, reaping in the profits during Barry Bonds' whole historical home run chase there. And now with A-Rod and everything, I feel like he's trying to make A-Rod retire because he's not going to come back at 43 years old because this is a huge suspension comparing it to other guys who got about 50 games. So I think he does kind of have a personal vendetta against A-Rod because there's reports saying that A-Rod held up investigations and was a problem for front offices and everything in the whole organization. But it's interesting to see how things will develop.
Yeah, I know, and let's move on here. We made, I think, all the points we can make on that story there. But moving on to the NHL here, another interesting story that came out within the past couple of days. Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews comes out and says that it's naive for fans and people to think that NHLers aren't using performance-enhancing drugs in the game, and he thinks eventually, one player is going to get caught, and that's going to be the legacy. So what do you think? I know NHL is probably the least nameworthy sport that comes up when you think of PEDs. You don't think of NHLers and performance-enhancing drugs, but Jonathan Toews says players are pretty much using them, and it's naive to think for fans to think if players aren't.
I think there's definitely some truth to it. Being a fan personally, though, I would absolutely hate to see a rampant use of PEDs across the league. But I mean, it's definitely out there, and it is naive to think otherwise. But for the game itself, I would just really hate to see the NHL go through an MLB era full of drugs and just scandals and everything else. But I mean, who knows what's really going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think NHL players are thought of as the most common man out of all the four sports here.
I'd like to think that these guys condition the best, or at least adequately with other, professional.
And I think
sports
they're
players.
seen as the most normal, players off the ice, arena, stadium, whatever sport you want to call it here. I think they're thought of as the most, down to earth. But yet, Jonathan Toews says, some players going to get caught, and I think the testing maybe should be, raised and maybe
they have
improved on.
their team testing and then the one unscheduled individual test, obviously. Could there be more done? I think so, yeah.
So, let's move on here to another NHL story, which I thought was probably another interesting story here. The Nashville Predators, one of the smaller market teams here, I think we could say in the NHL. Whenever they play the Blackhawks the past couple seasons, Blackhawk fans have gone up to Nashville's arena and there's been more red in the crowd, which is the Blackhawks colors, than Nashville. And now Nashville is saying, they're sort of limiting which I think is interesting, limiting the ticket sales to Blackhawk fans, which means they play the Blackhawk three times this season. So at home. So if you're a Blackhawks fan, instead of being able to buy a single ticket to one of those games, you have to buy 2 tickets, which is sort of going to limit the fans that go up there because I don't think fans want to dish out the money with how expensive tickets are for 2 tickets rather than 1, which if you're a Predators, I think it's sort of a smart strategy. They tried doing this last season with the Red Wings fans when the Red Wings came to town. Yet they didn't do this. Instead, they said if you're a Red Wings fan, if you trade in your Red Wings jersey, you get 50% off a Predators jersey. So instead of trying to, limit the Red Wings fans, they tried to convert them into Predators fans, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, this is a strategy that I've never really heard of a home team doing to limit opposing fans and to be allowed to, watch the game in their home arena.
I think it's just really smart marketing overall. I mean, instead of trying to get new fans, why not convert other ones? I think it's just a good idea. And limiting ticket sales to, a potential rival or just another real good team is another smart idea, I think, because this is a franchise that's trying to grow. It's a market that is growing. It's on the up and up right now. And obviously, when the Predators are at home, they're going to want their own fans cheering for them. They're not going to want to hear boos in their own home stadium. So I think having more fans come to the game, Predator fans, is a great thing.
Do you think this is a risky move, though, by the Predators? Because they could potentially be losing out on, ticket sales because if Blackhawks fans don't show up, yet Predators fans don't end up replacing them, you're sort of losing business there because, there's going to be not as many ticket sales.
Is it a risky move as far as revenue? Absolutely. But I don't think that they're that concerned about it. I mean, it's not it's not a huge hockey powerhouse like Montreal or Boston or something like that. They're trying to grow, and I think in order to do that, you got to leave the space open to grow. You can't have the whole stadium filled with Blackhawks fans. I mean, so yeah, you'll definitely lose some money there, but I think in the long run, it's definitely a lucrative idea.
Yeah, so that's a story we'll definitely have to keep our eye on here. But, that's it here for another episode of Sports Chatter TV. Again, I'm your host, Ev Medell, alongside my host, Steve Atkinson. And don't forget to tune in next week here for another episode of Sports Chatter TV.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.